Welcome to Occult Archives. You know, the show where we kind of dig into the hidden stories, the myths, the legends, all that stuff behind some of history's, well, let's face it, most feared books.
Yeah, those books that people would hide in the back of the library.
Right, exactly. The ones you don't want to leave lying around,
Sure.
just in case.
Wait, no, Bill?
And this is Season 1, Episode 10, which means we're tackling the Sefer ha-Razim. You might know it as The Secret Book of Angels and Magic.
Ooh, Angels and Magic. Sounds intriguing already.
So in this deep dive, we're actually going to look at something pretty specific from this ancient text. It's basically a set of instructions, like a recipe almost, that claims you can have success in, well, everything.
Like win the lottery, ace that job interview, become an internet sensation, all of that.
I mean, the book doesn't specify those things directly, but yeah, the implication is that by following these particular rites, you can achieve pretty much any goal you set your mind to.
Sounds a bit too good to be true, but hey, let's hear it out.
Okay, so are you ready for this? The book's instructions are pretty direct, straight to the point. It says to succeed, quote, zealously perform the rite. And the rite, the one we're unpacking today, starts with a rather, interesting instruction.
Interesting how?
It says, and I quote, take a lion cub, slaughter it with a bronze knife.
Whoa, okay, now that's an attention getter. A lion cub and a bronze knife. That's pretty intense imagery right off the bat.
Yeah, definitely not your average self-help book, right?
Yeah, not at all.
So before we really get into the nitty-gritty of this ritual, maybe we should back up a little. For folks who might not be familiar, what exactly is the Sefer ha-Razim? What kind of book are we dealing with here?
Right, so Sefer ha-Razim is Hebrew, and it literally translates to the Book of the Mysteries.
Catchy title.
Right, and the translation we're working with here is by Michael A. Morgan. Now, what makes this book even more mysterious is how it came to be. It wasn't found as a complete manuscript, like tucked away in some ancient library.
Oh, so we're talking fragments, lost pieces, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It was actually reconstructed by a scholar named Mordecai Margalioth, and he basically pieced it together from all these different fragments. A lot of them were found in the Geniza.
Geniza, now that's a word I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, so the Geniza is kind of like, well, imagine a storage room in a synagogue. A place where they put old, damaged Hebrew text that they don't want to just throw away. It's like a treasure trove for scholars.
So like finding a lost chapter of a book in your grandma's attic, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. And Margalioth, through his research, he figured that the Sefer ha-Razim probably dates back to the early Talmudic period.
So we're talking roughly when?
Somewhere between the late 3rd and early 4th century CE.
Wow, so that puts it right in the thick of things during a period of a huge rabbinic scholarship. I mean, the Talmud itself was being compiled around that time, right?
Right, exactly. So we're talking about a period of intense religious and intellectual ferment, and in the midst of all that, you have this book emerging from the shadows, so to speak.
Okay, so picture this. We've got this ancient text pieced together like a historical jigsaw puzzle. It's shrouded in mystery, and it pops up during a period of major religious development. Now, how is this book structured? I mean, is it just like a random collection of spells and incantations?
No, it's actually very organized. It's built around this cosmology of 7 firmaments.
7 firmaments. Okay, now we're talking celestial layers, right? Like levels of heaven.
Exactly, like a layered universe, each one with its own distinct characteristics. And each firmament is said to be populated by these angelic encampments. So you have all these different groups of angels, each with their own overseers, their own hierarchy. And get this, each one is associated with specific magical practices.
So hold on, it's like each level of heaven has its own angelic department, and each department specializes in a different kind of magic.
Yeah, something like that. And the idea is if you want to achieve something specific here on Earth, you need to figure out which firmament, which group of angels is associated with that goal, and then you follow the rituals and invocations that are outlined for that particular group.
So it's like if you want to, I don't know, win a chariot race, you'd appeal to the angels of speed in the, say, 3rd firmament. And if you wanted to, I don't know, have a bountiful harvest, you'd go to the angels of agriculture in the 5th firmament, something like that.
It's a fascinating way of looking at magic, right?
Yeah.
Like a celestial bureaucracy where you have to find the right department to handle your request.
Okay, so 7 levels of heaven, each with its own angelic specialty. Now, where does our lion cub sacrifice fit into all of this?
Right, so the ritual we're talking about is found in the 4th firmament.
4th firmament, got it.
And this particular firmament is influenced by a whole bunch of angelic princes. each with their own encampments. They're said to be connected to the sun, both during the day and at night.
Okay, solar power, day and night. So we're talking about some pretty powerful forces here.
Right. And our focus is on the fourth encampment within this firmament, which is ruled by an overseer called KLMYY.
KLMYY, that's a name to remember. So what are this overseer's angels known for? What's their area of expertise, magically speaking?
Well, according to the Sefer ha-Razim, KLMYY and his crew, their specialty is influencing the minds of kings, nobles, chiefs, basically anyone in a position of power.
So if you were, say, an ambitious merchant who wanted to get on the good side of the emperor, or maybe a general trying to win a crucial battle, these are the angels you'd want to get in touch with.
Exactly. The book suggests that through the right rituals, you could potentially win their favor, maybe even receive some kind of divine mercy.
Divine intervention in the halls of power? That's pretty high-stakes stuff.
Definitely. And this is where our lion cub comes back into the picture.
All right, let's get back to that. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So walk us through this ritual. What exactly does the Sefer ha-Razim tell us to do?
Okay, so the instructions start with, as we mentioned, taking a lion cub and then slaughtering it with a bronze knife. And it's worth noting here, for our listeners, that the lion was a symbol of royalty and power in so many ancient cultures. So the choice of animal here is probably not random. It's very deliberate, very symbolic.
So right off the bat, we're seeing a connection between the ritual and its intended outcome, influencing powerful people, like effects like, as they say in the world of magic.
Right, exactly. So after you've performed the sacrifice, the next step is to collect the cub's blood and then carefully remove its heart. The blood is then placed inside the heart. And then this is where it gets even more intense. You're supposed to write the names of the angels, those serving under KLMYY, the ones who influence rulers, and you write them with the cub's blood directly onto the skin between the cub's eyes.
Writing in blood. I mean, even today, that's a powerful image. It definitely conveys a sense of seriousness, of something really profound happening. And what about the bronze knife? Any significance there?
Yeah, I mean, in ancient magical practices, different metals were often associated with different planets or had symbolic meanings. Bronze, it's an alloy of copper and tin. So it's possible there were some specific astrological or alchemical reasons for using it, though the text doesn't go into detail about that.
So more layers of symbolism, deeper meanings we might not even be fully aware of.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the lion cub sacrifice, the blood, the angelic names. What happens next? How do you actually use all of this to influence someone?
Right, so the ritual then goes on to describe how to actually use all this to sway someone's opinion. And it's interesting because the instructions actually vary a bit depending on who you're trying to influence.
So like different procedures for a king versus, say, a wealthy merchant.
Exactly. But there are some core elements that stay the same. First, you need 3 key spices: styrax, musk, and the text mentions a possible third one, but it's not entirely clear.
Okay, so we're adding an aromatic element to the mix. Incense was pretty common in a lot of ancient rituals, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. So then you have to be ritually clean, pure, and you stand facing the brilliant star.
Brilliant star. Any idea what star they're talking about?
Scholars think it probably refers to Venus, the planet Venus.
Yeah.
And in ancient astrology, Venus was associated with love, beauty, and sometimes with things like political success.
Okay, so Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, and maybe a little bit of political maneuvering on the side. That makes sense. What's next?
So you've got your spices, you're facing Venus, and you burn the spices like incense. Then you hold a cup with that wine and blood mixture we talked about earlier.
That potent brew. Got it.
And then you recite a specific adjuration over the cup 21 times. It's basically a really formal invocation calling on KLMYY and his angels. You also address Venus 300 times, not to mention an angel named HSDYL.
Whoa, 21 times for the adjuration, 300 times for Venus. Those are some serious repetition numbers. Clearly, they believed in the power of persistence. And HSDYL, any background on that one?
We don't have a lot of information about HSDYL outside of this text. But in the Sefer ha-Razim, angelic names are a big deal. They hold real power.
So names as a source of power, a very ancient belief. Okay, so you've done the invocations, the repetitions. What happens then? Any sign that all this is actually working?
Actually, yeah. The Sefer ha-Razim says that you should see something like a coal of fire descending into the blood and wine mixture in the cup.
A fiery sign. That's pretty dramatic. I guess that's your confirmation that, you've made contact, that the ritual is working.
Exactly. A kind of divine thumbs up.
You mentioned earlier that the ritual changes depending on who you're trying to influence. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Let's say you want to impress a king or maybe a really important nobleman. or even a judge.
So people with real power.
Right. In those cases, the ritual says you should first wash yourself with living water.
Living water, what does that mean?
Probably fresh, flowing water, like from a natural spring or a river.
Okay, so purification is key. What's next?
You anoint yourself with that lion blood and wine mixture. And then get this, you place the lion's heart over your own heart before you go meet with that powerful person.
So you're literally carrying the heart of a powerful beast over your own heart. It's like a symbolic transfer of strength and courage.
Right, like you're embodying the lion's power.
What if you're not trying to influence just one person, but like a whole group of people? Say the citizens of a city.
Ah, yeah, for that, the ritual is a bit different. The instructions say to hide the lion's heart somewhere within the city.
So instead of wearing it, you conceal it. Interesting.
And you also write the names of the overseer and the angels on a piece of gold. Then you recite a specific adjuration aimed at, instilling a sense of fear and obedience in the people of the city.
So more of a psychological influence, working on the collective mindset of the city.
Yeah, and after you've hidden the heart, you wait 3 days. Then you go into the city, but you put a little bit of the lion's blood under your feet before you enter.
So a subtle connection to the hidden heart, the lion's power, through the blood under your feet. It's like leaving a magical footprint.
Exactly. A way of grounding the influence, maybe even claiming a kind of dominion over the city.
Okay, so we've seen how to influence individuals and groups. Now, what about something a little more personal? Like, say you wanted to win the heart of, I don't know, a wealthy woman, someone who's maybe a little out of your league. Does the Sefer ha-Razim have any advice for that?
Actually, it does. There's a section on binding oneself to a great or wealthy woman's heart.
Ah, so love magic, always a popular theme.
Right. So for this one, you need to take perspiration, specifically from your face, and put it in a new, clean glass vessel.
Perspiration, that's an interesting ingredient. What's the significance there?
It's probably about a personal connection, something that carries your essence.
Okay, so it's not just any liquid, it's something specifically tied to you. And what do you do with this perspiration concoction?
So you take a thin plate of tin, a tin lamella, and you inscribe the names of the overseer and his angels on it. Then you throw this tin plate into the flask with your perspiration. And as you do this, you recite an adjuration that's supposed to, turn her heart towards you, make her fall in love with you.
A love spell, inscribed in metal, infused with your essence. Pretty potent stuff.
Right. And then the final step is to bury this flask under a place where she frequently walks, like her doorstep or the entrance to her house. You do this under a full moon, and there's one last incantation you say to ensure she comes back to you in love.
So we've gone from the dramatic sacrifice of a lion cub to a hidden flask of perspiration buried under a doorstep, all under the light of a full moon. It's amazing how diverse these rituals can be, all within the same text.
Right. And throughout all these different rituals, you see these recurring themes.
Yeah.
Like the use of specific materials. We talked about the bronze knife, but there are bronze images in other parts of the book. Copper plates, gold, silver, and of course the tin in this last ritual. And the emphasis on purity is really important. The practitioner has to be ritually clean before doing any of this. And then there's the timing. Certain rituals have to be performed on specific days, like the 7th day of the month, or at a specific hour, or under a full moon, like we just saw. It's all very precise.
It's like they believed that magic followed a very specific set of rules, like a kind of cosmic code.
Exactly. And it's important to remind our listeners that we're presenting these rituals as they're described in the Sefer ha-Razim. We're not saying they work, and we're definitely not endorsing any of this, especially not the animal sacrifice.
Right. Our goal is to explore these beliefs, to understand them in their historical context, not to, encourage anyone to go out and try this stuff.
Exactly. This is about understanding history, not replicating it.
So, thinking about all this, what can we as modern readers take away from this one ritual in the Sefer ha-Razim? I mean, it's a pretty wild ride from a lion cub sacrifice to love spells.
It really gives us a glimpse into how people in the ancient world thought about magic. The belief that you could influence events, even the decisions of powerful people, through these elaborate rituals, using specific materials, incantations, all of that.
And the level of detail, the specificity of it all, it really points to a belief in what we call sympathetic magic, the idea that like affects like. using the heart of a lion to influence the heart of a king.
Right. And it also shows the importance they placed on names, on words themselves. The idea that the names of angels, written in a specific way, could actually have power.
So much of magic is about belief, about the power of symbols and words.
And it's fascinating to think about why people were so drawn to these practices. What were they hoping to achieve? What did it mean to them to have this kind of influence, this connection to the supernatural?
I mean, here we are, centuries later, still talking about this book, still trying to unravel its mysteries. It clearly tapped into something very deep in the human psyche, this desire to control our destiny, to influence the world around us.
And the fact that it popped up during the early Talmudic period, a time of such intense religious development, it raises some really interesting questions. How did these magical practices coexist with the more formalized religious beliefs of the time?
Were they seen as complementary? Or were they in conflict? Or maybe it was more complicated than that, with different groups having different views.
Exactly. It's not always a clear-cut picture.
So, for our listeners out there, think about the historical context, the cultural background of all of this. Why would people in that time and place have been so invested in these kinds of rituals?
What did it say about their understanding of the world, of their place in the cosmos? What needs were they trying to meet through these practices?
Because, let's be honest, these rituals were not for the faint of heart. Slaughtering a lion cub, collecting perspiration, burying things under doorsteps in the dead of night, it's pretty intense stuff.
Right. It shows a level of commitment, a belief that the potential rewards were worth the effort, the risk.
And that, I think, is one of the things that makes Sefer ha-Razim so fascinating. It's a window into a world where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual were much more fluid, where people believed they could interact with these unseen forces and actually shape their reality.
It challenges us to reconsider our own assumptions about what's possible, about the limits of human agency.
And really, we've only scratched the surface here. The Sefer ha-Razim is full of all these detailed instructions, lists of angels, their powers. It's a whole cosmology, a magical worldview waiting to be explored.
And what's really striking is the blend of different elements. You have these very structured angelic hierarchies, but then you also have practices that seem to come from folk magic traditions, the kind of things that were probably passed down orally for generations.
So it's not just a single unified system. It's more like a tapestry woven from different strands of belief.
Exactly. And it reflects the reality of the Hellenistic world, where all these different cultures and traditions were interacting, blending together.
So we hope this deep dive has given you, our listeners, something to think about, maybe even challenge your own preconceived notions about ancient magic. Join us next time as we continue our exploration of the occult archives.
Who knows what secrets we'll uncover next?
And maybe next time we can delve deeper into that cosmology, those 7 firmaments.
Sounds good to me.
Until then, keep those books hidden, and as always, stay curious.
Stay curious.